Hello everybody. Welcome back to the first video of the traditional Catholic Soldier channel. We here are basically the idea of the channel is to discuss traditional Catholic topics, maybe some traditional Catholic politics, some ideas of what's going to happen in the future for traditional Catholicism, maybe analyze the different traditional Catholic groups, and figure out long term if traditional Catholicism will survive into the 22nd century. That's a big question that a lot of people are kind of wondering at this point. There seems to be a silent drift in certain groups. There's issues in particular groups. Certain groups have fixed these issues prior. Some issues have arisen then from other issues. Um, for instance, Pius X, they don't really they kind of figured out what happened with Bishop Williamson. They haven't made a full decision on the dilemma that they have because they kind of kicked him out, and that creates some problems there. Whereas some other societies like CMRI still have to figure out how are they going to claim the Tuke lineage without saying that they're not validly ordained. Pius V is facing a multitude of issues, mainly the large fact that there's now been a two-faction split into the younger women are feminists and the young men are counter to this and basically had to create a counter-revolutionary spirit, if you will, and it causes issues long term within the movement there. There's others, the independents are slowly dying off. Feniites have a lot of similar issues to the independents. They are going to die off pretty quick. There's a lot of Feniites that go now to any traditional Catholic Latin Mass. You got the Society of St. Peter, which is kind of in a pickle because of the what the Pope has recently done, or Pope Francis did a while back, in which limits the potential for Latin masses. And then there are other groups like Opus Dei and I think Society of Christ the King and Good Faith, I think is the Shepherd of Good Faith. They are in that dilemma too, because they are in union with Rome. And kind of like Pius X, but Pius X is different and that it's independent. Whereas all these were actually belonged to Rome. They actually were part of the Roman Catholic Church under the Pope, whereas Pius X is Catholic, is Roman, um, but they don't have to listen to the Pope, they say, which is whatever. There many popes have said some crazy stuff in the past, and some people just ignore them. And it happened a long, long time ago with the Old Catholics, and although the Old Catholics are technically heretical, they and they're dying off too. It's normal and it's happened for thousands of years. There was there's always been heresies, there's always been problems, and it's just we have to work through it. And as a traditional Catholic, you have to work through and find a a solution if you're a layperson, because you have all these churches, you have all these options, but the question really becomes if certain people, if you let's say you go to this one church and you've been raised up there all life, your whole life you've lived there, and all of a sudden you need to go to some city and you're like, well, I have to go Sunday. Is there a mass there? Oh, there's a mass here. So you go there, and it's like traditional Catholic, and you don't really care if it's like CMRI, Pius V, Pius X, maybe it's the Latin Mass under the Roman Rite, and you're looking at it and you're like, oh, it's just a good Latin Mass, and you go in and you do your missal, you do your mass, you don't really pay attention. And then you come back and you're like, oh, I went there, and the people are like, oh my goodness, heretic, heretic. And it's like, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to go to mass? I understand that I have to do my own research, and if a priest is not validly ordained, you must affirm if he is ordained or not, and there has to be research done. And the problem is like you don't have all the time in the world to research every priest or every single topic. I mean, you could go forever on just the Tuke lineage, just the Tuke lineage. And that's the problem. You don't know everything. Because some of his priests are ordained. I mean, you have the Pomeranian Church that is validly ordained, and it's a traditional Catholic movement, but nobody in the traditional Catholic movement in America is going to ever accept the Pomeranian Church. This is a side note edited in post. I did some research on the Pomeranian Church, and it seems they actually have changed their missal, and they changed the Mass to about 20 minutes. I don't exactly know if it's valid, because if they changed the consecration, then it would. But just by the evidence, they might not be fully in league with like the regular Sedevicus, or Sedevacantist, excuse me, and they are definitely more of a conclavist organization. Um, I'll probably do a video of them in the future. Just side note for the note that I had said that I thought they were traditionalists, and yes, they are, but they are not the same kind as like Pius X or Society of St. Pius V or the Fraternity of St. Peter. Thanks. It's the craziest thing, but it's true, and it happens. So the dilemmas within traditional Catholicism, the contradictions as well, you can really see it in some churches, or just the vile hatred towards any other traditional Catholic group. Like, I'm just trying to go to Mass, and I go to Pius X, I go to Pius V, and you get all these issues. I'll go to CMRI, I'll do this. It's like, I just want to get to a valid Mass, I just want to receive the sacraments. And this is just an example. This is just an example of like a person I know personally. And, you know, sometimes they have to go to a Feniite. I mean, it's rare because they are heretical, but if he's validly ordained, I mean, the question really is like, he might be a heretic because of the they do not believe in the, a lot of them do not believe in the, or refuse to believe in the baptism of desire, baptism of blood. I've heard a two-type argument from a person that said that, oh, it's not that we don't believe it, it's that you can't just canonize them. And this is an interesting idea. But at the same token, it's like we're having all this confusion and we're having all these issues and we're having these dilemmas. I mean, Pius X has really kind of gotten their things kind of were going really good for them. Like they were spot on, and you know, Bishop Williamson was an amazing bishop, and when they kind of put him to the table, kind of put him to the rug, and said eat dirt, it was like, I don't know about this. But it happened, and they marched on. You know, it's the old traditional Catholic rule. I got to keep going. You can't stop. So they kept on going, and sooner or later, they reached their destination, and then all of a sudden, Pope Francis is like, oh, traditional Latin masses, we have to have I think it's the approval of the bishop. And he gives a whole papal bull, and it's like, so all the work that Pius X did is kind of not, and it just crumbles. And then you have all these issues, these dilemmas, these problems. And this happens on all traditional Catholic movements, and you'll have infighting and factions. I mean, there's a billion factions, and everyone is a little group, and everyone has a little issue. And I'll go into this deeper when we get more into videos and each individual topic. This is just an introduction. But long story short, it's like we all feel like we want to have a unified movement. The problem is we're never going to have a unified movement. And that leads us to the final dilemma that I'll get into in-depth to another video is, can traditional Catholicism survive? And the real question, which movement can survive? That's the real question, because you never know. Tomorrow, the new pope could literally say, oh, Pius X is a true mass, and not only agree with them, but even state, we're going to incorporate several of their bishops, make one an archbishop. He could do that tomorrow. That flips the dynamic on its head, because then you have all these other traditional Catholic movements that are going to be put to the curb. Or you could have tomorrow where the Pope say, oh, all traditional Catholics are heretical. He could declare that modernism is not a heresy.
anymore. He could legally declare that. And that could cause an issue, a real issue within Pius X. And it caused an issue with all the other priests and bishops that have tried to, that were traditional in heart, that have tried to at least connect back to the church. And it'd be very difficult. And that, again, flips the paradigm again on its head. And so it's going to go back and forth. And it depends on a billion factors. It depends if the traditional Catholic movement's going to keep going, growing in this slow, agonizing, slow-paced growth that it's not going to sustain itself. Long term, something's going to have to give, because otherwise we're just going to become like the old Catholics. And the old Catholics, if recount to the history, old Catholicism, if you want to call it by its real name, was because of the 1870s when they did the Vatican I and they declared the infallibility of the Pope. A bunch of bishops and priests refused to accept it, and it caused a problem, very big problem. And so there was a split, and it wasn't a big split, but it was a split nonetheless that was kind of not like the traditional Catholics. It had more than traditional Catholics when they split in the 1960s and 70s. But it died out because it got into the infighting, which happened in the 80s and 90s for the traditional Catholic movement. It quickly always falls to infighting for some reason. And it died out. It is officially dead in the United States. It's still alive in Poland, but it's not old Catholicism, that is, but it's not powerful anymore, and it's not an influence, and it's failed and died, and it's looking like the traditional Catholic movement, if it does not figure out something about the Pope, Sedevacantists, if it doesn't figure out the CMRI issue and the Tuke bishops and the Tuke lineage, if it doesn't understand or figure out the Bishop Mendez, who ordained Pius V's bishops and a couple of CMRI priests, if it doesn't figure out any of those issues long term, then you have issues. If it doesn't figure out the dilemmas of the churches and the people and the lay people, they go to multiple types of traditional Catholic churches, and it's just going to cause a mess, and it's going to die off. That's really what I want to leave it off at. So I hope this video is a good introduction to the dilemmas of the traditional Catholic movement, and maybe that this is a good forehand to what is to come. So thank you so much, and God bless.